Okay, now that I have collected myself, I am going to give you guys the TLDR and like the gist of why I'm packing and what the heck is happening. So we are leaving tomorrow morning at like the crack of dawn, 5 a.m. and driving up to Stanley, Idaho. It's about 5-ish hours, give or take, up there. And it's really a work trip for me. Ryan's coming, we're bringing the dogs because we're also going to use it kind of for a little bit of play and fun and just to like escape the city for a little bit. But I am doing a project for the cabin retreat that we're staying at. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be beautiful. The cabins are like nestled right up on the river. I do have an itinerary for the weekend, but I will basically put that itinerary all on my Instagram. And so in the YouTube video, because like this is not actually a part of the equation, I'm kind of just gonna lean into like the visual storytelling. I will put like the itinerary in the description. But Stanley is a very small town. It, I think, has one grocery store, which I feel like tells you everything that you need to know. A lot of the restaurants are closed for off season. So we had approximately like 3 to pick from for the days that we were there and the meals that we did decide to eat out. But I think it's going to be really beautiful. We have plans to go to some hot springs, which there are a ton in Stanley and around Stanley. If you're familiar with the area, Stanley is considered like the gateway to the Sawtooth Mountains. And the Sawtooths, at least to me, they kind of look like the Swiss Alps. In Stanley, very much so in the summer, like the massive green landscapes and all the agriculture and the open fields, and then the Sawtooth just like jutting up in the background. So I think after this, I'm just gonna segue right into going to Stanley. We crawled into the car the next morning, long before the sun came up, and began our long trek up to Stanley, Idaho. I'd been this way before, through the most northern parts of Utah, over the state line, and through the low, dry plains of southern Idaho. But I had never ventured past Sun Valley and didn't really know what was waiting for us after the last landmark that I was somewhat familiar with. This part of the West is quiet, vast, and deeply diverse in its landscapes. We weaved our way through flat meadows filled with golden yellow grass, ancient, rugged lava fields, vibrantly green pastures with stacks of hay that had been set out in anticipation of the coming winter, and eventually found ourselves slowly inching up the mountain passes. And like most mountain west states, the weather in the higher elevations is forever unpredictable. The dry air and overcast skies eventually gave way to thick snowflakes and slick roads that made me want to do nothing more than to pull over and wait it out. But like most scary things in life, this too shall pass, and eventually we were reacquainted with the golden grasses and red twig dogwood bushes that line the Salmon River. And after what seemed like hours of driving through the mountains, we finally pulled up to our cozy cabin at Stanley River Retreat. The cabin was so charming and the perfect place to shelter us from the snow, brittle cold nights, and exactly what you would hope to come back to after days filled with adventure. My favorite part, though, was being able to step right outside the back door and be mere feet away from the river. When we first arrived, the clouds hung so low in the valley you couldn't really see much. But I knew that if the scenery was already this beautiful in the midst of a storm, we would be in for a real treat when the skies finally cleared. Eventually, the sun did break through the clouds, and I did what I always do when the days are cold and gray and sat with my face towards the warmth of the sun, soaking in every last ray and taking a minute to appreciate the fact that I got to experience this very moment in this exact place. The Sawtooth Mountains were even more incredible than I had imagined. The ridges and peaks varied in height, cragginess, and shape, but all were clothed in heavy white snow that in certain lighting seemed to be iridescent. Before heading to dinner at the only restaurant open during the off-season, We spent the last few hours of daylight watching the clouds shift from shades of blue to purple to pink and eventually to a deep, rich orange. Mountain Village Saloon is what you would expect from any restaurant in a mountain town. The locals that work there are so sweet and hospitable, the portion sizes are ungodly large, and the conversation is always the best part. We wanted to spend the rest of the night in the warmth of the cabin, so we got all wrapped up in our pajamas, let the reality TV bicker in the background, and I decided it was the perfect time to cast on a new knit project. After finishing my last cardigan, I thought it would be a good idea to give a different pattern a go and apply everything I had learned from the first one to this new project. The Sakuri cardigan seemed straightforward enough, so I started the process of beginning a pattern with a singular piece of yarn, a written pattern that to a non-knitter probably looks like another language, and a bit of overconfidence. Ryan was asking a lot of questions about the new pattern, so we decided to see if he could learn the basics of knitting. Not that either of us ever expect him to be a Fair Isle knitter extraordinaire, but it was fun to see him attempting things like a backward loop cast on and the purl stitch. Our second day in Stanley started out so gray and cold. The riverbanks were frozen and the grass highlighted in frost. So we didn't rush ourselves. We got out of bed slowly, watched the fog rise, and waited for the sun to start warming everything up. Seeing the mountains framed by the low-hanging clouds felt unreal, like it was almost too perfect to be true. After spending some time admiring the scenery, I finally started to get ready for the adventures we had planned. The days are already short this time of year, but when you're in the mountains, they feel even shorter. The sun doesn't make its way over the ridge until later in the morning, and in the evenings it slips behind the mountains long before sunset, which meant that we had to make the most of the limited daylight and squeeze the day's activities all into just a handful of hours. For our first stop, we went to the Stanley Community Center for Pancakes, a monthly community event our cabin host told us about and had invited us to. And once Ryan's belly was full of buttermilk pancakes and I had eaten far too much bacon, we made our way into a nearby canyon. Along the Salmon River, you'll find an abundance of natural hot springs. So on this particular day, our mission was to visit as many as possible: Sunbeam Hot Springs, Cove Creek Hot Springs, and Boat Box Hot Springs. Out of the three, Sunbeam was definitely our favorite. The river was so clear and the water flowing from the underground geothermal activity was so warm, something that certainly felt like a treat on such a brisk, cold day. We also managed to have one of the hot springs all to ourselves, which made it all the more magical. One of my favorite things to do in the mountains is to just drive and stop at every single pretty spot that catches our eye. So after a bit of meandering through the canyon, we found a beautiful place to pull off and spent some time letting the dogs play. We wound down for bed early this day, made soup on the little electric stove for dinner, and when the sun finally set and the sky was jet black, we went outside to stargaze. Waking up on our last day was bittersweet. I wasn't quite ready to say goodbye to the beautiful night skies, limited cell service, towering sawtooth mountains, and slow days. So we woke up early on our last morning and drove down to Redfish Lake in hopes of dramatic scenery and a gorgeous alpine glow. Oh look, I can get a little pine cone as a keepsake. The fog danced across the lake and the air was so crisp it almost hurt. And the silence here was so thick I felt like I should hold my breath in an effort to not disturb it. I felt an enormous amount of gratitude this morning, feeling grateful that I live in a lifetime where landscapes and nature like this exist. Grateful to have the privilege to visit places like this. Grateful for the ability to see it and savor it. And grateful to be able to share this moment with the beings I adore most. And just like that, our time here dwindled to an end. We piled into the car, cranked up the heat, and I stared longingly out of the window, dreaming of the next time we would come back. Trading the towering mountains for the black lava fields, the lava fields for the open, grassy plains, and eventually crawling back over the Utah state line. Despite the fact that there has been a lot of driving and adventuring in this vlog, we're not quite done yet. This little tidbit that I'm doing today is not nearly as intense as our almost 6-hour drive to Idaho, or to the town in Idaho that we visited. But I am going on a little adventure slash solo date today. So there is this tiny, cute little mountain town that is east of us called Midway. And it has the most gorgeous architecture. When people, I believe, started first immigrating there, a lot of them were Swiss. And so there's a ton of Swiss influence in the architecture. Also because the town is relatively small, it also has a lot of adorable and really beautifully curated local small shops and boutiques. And so I really want to go back and properly like mosey around the town and really like look at the architecture, because the last time we went it was getting dark, so I couldn't really see anything, and I also couldn't take photos of it. But also there is a gallery slash boutique there called Georgie. And when I first went, there was this beautiful mother of pearl signet ring. And I do this thing where if I see something that I'm really drawn to, but it's not a necessity, and it's also, I would say, over like at least $50, I make myself wait. And I put it on this little wish list that I have in my notes app. And if in 4 weeks, 4 months, 1 year, I still want whatever it is on the list, I will then like let myself either go get it or schedule out like a time to go get it or order it or whatever it might be. And I have not stopped thinking about this ring. I also haven't erased it off my list, which I do quite often. Like I'll think of something or I'll see something that I like really think I like, and then a couple weeks pass and I'm like, actually I don't really like it that much. That has not been the case with this ring. And so I am going to treat myself and let myself get it. So I'm going to let myself just have a little day. I'm starting this a little bit later. It's almost 2 p.m. So I'm really just gonna go there, look at this little gallery again. I really want to show you guys. Last time we went to the gallery, the mother who kind of partners with the daughter, they own the gallery together-ish, but the mother is an artist and she gave us like a full grand tour of the boutique slash gallery. She even let us look into the back room, which is essentially a sunroom in her art studio. And it was just, if you're like a creative person, like seeing into other people's like creative spaces is just, I love that so much. But yeah, I really want to go back and I want to show it to you guys. I want to like document it because it is such a beautiful space. And I also really want to go look at the old homes and like properly absorb them. So we're gonna head out. I'm about to hop on the highway and head east, and we're just gonna have ourselves a little afternoon. Doesn't make sense. I haven't been to an extra small since I was like 7 years old. So I don't know, but we'll see. Good morning. It is a little after 9 and I have just sat down at my desk to start doing all of my administrative stuff for work. So usually on Mondays is when I sit down and I basically spend the entire day on the computer. Also this time of the month we're pretty much in the middle of November, and this is when, at least for my digital marketing agency for small businesses, this is when I am really doing the most work because I am preparing for next month. So there's a lot of prep that I have to do today and a lot of kind of building out calendars and such for the month of December. But in addition to that, I also just signed a new client. So we also have to get out our agreement. I have to send out our invoice deposit. I need to do some web design and development, research and stuff for them and kind of get that ball rolling. I have a few other things. I actually, just as I started this video, I got an email for some film that I got developed for a project that I did in Idaho. So when we went to that cabin retreat, I just got the film back for that. So I also need to add editing all of those assets and scheduling them and submitting them to my to-do list today as well, because we're about a week out now since the trip, which is really not that bad at all, but I try to be as proactive as possible, especially it's not just doesn't just affect me. So try to be really quick with that. But yeah, that's all of the work stuff today. I'll probably be on the computer, like I said, for a majority of the day, which is fine. That's just is what it is. But that is kind of how my mornings are looking right now. I have really struggled with having a routine. Honestly, ever since we moved into this house, which has almost been 2 years, I think one was just a change of environment, and we were renovating for an extended period of time there, and that meant that there was no semblance of normalcy. And then when I was still at my full-time corporate, I guess, job, um, I just didn't have anything in me to have a routine. I whatever energy and willpower I did have was being allocated towards work. And so now I feel like things have finally settled out. I feel very settled in my work now. And so it's been a lot easier to kind of take a step back and think about what I want my morning routines to look like. And this morning was that. I've been waking up really early, just naturally. Usually before our alarms even go off, I've been waking up at 4:45, which I don't mind because I hate waking up to alarms. I think they're really disruptive. They kind of put me in a bad mood. But so I've been waking up really early. I try to avoid devices for my first quarter of my day because, at least for me, I spend so much time on the computer, on the phone, and so the last thing that I want to do is what little time I have allocated towards not working, I don't want to spend it on a device. So usually I am either knitting in the morning for 30 to 45 minutes, usually in silence, because again, just the less stimuli, the better, honestly. Or I read, and then we take the dogs on a walk, preferably before the sun even comes up, before anyone's out of bed. It's just a lot more peaceful. And then depending on the classes, I take a yoga class most mornings. It depends on the time, but sometimes I take it at 7, sometimes it's at 8, sometimes it's at 9. And yeah, and then I come home. I do my best to eat breakfast. Sometimes I have anxiety in the morning, so I'm not hungry. But for the most part, I eat. I take all my supplements and my medicine, and then usually I sit down by 9, sometimes 10, and I start my day. Like I said, Mondays are actually, that's a lie if I say Mondays are the longest, because usually it's Monday through Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, and then Fridays I can start to wind down and decompress. So yeah, that's kind of what my routine is right now. I feel like it has been working really well. I feel like I'm getting a lot out of my days. I don't feel like the darkness is catching me off guard at the end of the day around 3 or 4 p.m. and I feel like I don't feel like I did anything aside from work. Like this helps alleviate that. And it also is just making the day is so much more pleasant, and I'm just in such a good mood because like I am being very intentional with my time in the mornings, and also I'm not rushing around, which I think, at least for me or people like me, rushing in the morning when you're already someone that is really prone to anxiety and just like being stressed out really easily is not helpful at all. So, that is currently what's going on. I really need to get into this work because I foresee that this is going to take a lot longer than I thought.